So welcome to This Cycling Life. Today I'm delighted to be joined by Tom Cools, who is the founder of Soi Cycling. Now, for those of you who haven't heard about Soi Cycling yet, I'm sure you will soon, because Soi is probably one of the most hip, cool and fastest growing apparel brands for cycling in the world today. I was actually surprised when I started checking out Soi. I really liked the story of the company, and then I discovered actually that Tom is a neighbor of mine living very close to me here in Belgium. So Tom Cools, welcome to the show. It'd be great for you to introduce yourself a little bit and then also to share with us the story about how Soi Cycling all began.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here. My name is Tom, and I'm 44 years old. I'm into cycling. I was born in a cycling family. My grandfather, François, he was a pro cyclist back in the days, and I grew up with cycling and different stories about cycling.
Cool. And Tom, I mean, it is interesting, when you told me about the story of Soi, and I got on your website and I had a look, and you shared this incredible story about your grandfather with me, because of course, when people think Belgian cycling, of course, they think of the big names like Eddy Merckx or the Plankaarts, but your grandfather actually was really quite an institution in himself when it came to Belgian cycling. He was in the cycling world for many, many years and had the utmost respect from so many of the biggest names in the world of cycling. So can you tell us a little bit about François Cools?
Yeah, sure. He was born in 1918 in the UK. His parents were Belgian, but they went to the UK during the war, and he was born over there. And he got into cycling, and at age of 18, he took part in the Olympics in 36 in Berlin, like the very special edition of the Olympics. And he was a track cyclist, so he became Belgian national champ for a few times in a sprint on track. He took part in the Olympics in 36. And after his professional active career as a pro rider, he became a pacer on track in all of the 6 days races in Antwerp in Sportpaleis, legendary 6 days.
And when we say pacer, for those people not watching, I mean, first thing, of course, was the fact that your grandfather participated in that 1936 Olympics, which as an 18-year-old, being there in the heart at that time of Nazi Germany with Adolf Hitler, opening the games, it must have made a massive impression on him. And then, of course, going through that wartime experience of the Second World War, and then continue his cycling career, not as a rider later on in his life, but as a pacer. Can you explain a little bit about, like, for those people who are new to the 6 day scene, the track scene, what a pacer actually does, and why was it that your grandfather actually became one of the most sought after pacers in the world?
Yeah, it's quite easy. The pacer is the guy on the motorbike in front of a rider to make speed for the rider. And he was he was good at it, and he had a lot of contacts, and he always took part in the 6 days races with a lot of the big guys after his pro career. So he was in the 6 days with Eddy Merckx and Rik van Steenbergen and the legendary famous guys on the track.
And there's a very famous photograph actually of your grandfather with Eddy Merckx. Can you tell us about that? Because when you showed me, it really was an amazing photograph. I don't think anyone's seen Eddy Merckx like that before.
Yeah, it's funny because it's a picture I've never found on the internet. It's one my dad has printed on paper, and I think it might be the only one existing. But it's a picture of my granddad with Eddy Merckx. And the funny thing is that they, for fun, they switched places. So Eddy Merckx is on the motorbike as a young guy, maybe early 20s, I guess. And my grandfather, like a bit older and a bit more chubby, is on the bike behind Merckx. So it's a really funny picture. Yeah,
special picture.
Yeah, it is.
And your grandfather then went on not just to be a pacer of guys like Merckx and to experience incredible success. I mean, all over the world as a pacer as well. But he then went on also to the world of pro road cycling as a DS, as a director sportif. And can you tell us a little bit about that? Because he was also, you know, at the Tour de France and traveling in the cars and supporting the riders.
Yeah, in the mid 60s, I suppose, he became a directeur sportif of the Mann-Grundig, Dr. Mann-Grundig team, which was a Belgian pro team. And it was sponsored. The funny thing is, my grandfather is my father's father, and one of the main sponsors was Dr. Mann, was it called, and it was the company of my mother's mother. So they got all involved in the same team, and it's like a bit of family history, that team. So he became the manager of that team, the sports manager, and they took part in all the big races like the Tour de France. And in 1968, they became second with Herman Van Springel, which was a very dramatic end of the Tour de France, because Herman was in first place in the GC till the last day. And the last day there was a time trial, and the last time trial was won by Jan Janssen, who was world champion at that moment. And because of winning that time trial, Jan Janssen won the Tour de France as well, with only like 36 seconds difference.
Which is one of the smallest margins, I think, well, certainly up to that time in history, until we got to the Le Mans and Fignon. Sorry, but you also have the very special jersey, Tom. So maybe maybe we should show everybody that, because that's really amazing.
This is one of the team's jerseys. They couldn't use it in the Tour de France because it was yellow, and they were not allowed to ride with it, so they had to change colors for the Tour de France.
Yeah. And you've got some amazing. I mean, we share photos during this interview of some of those incredible experiences of your grandfather. But also, there was some tragedy in your grandfather's experience there, particularly at the Tour de France with Tom Simpson. Can you share that story with us?
Yeah, my grandfather was right behind Simpson when he fell off his bike and died. So he was in the Tour de France. Those days it was like the national teams participating in the Tour de France. And my grandfather was the sports director of the Belgian team. And he was, right behind the British guys and the British car. So he was there when Simpson... when he fell off his bike, and he always was like, it was something special. I remember. Yeah.
And then, I mean, Tom, you lost your mum at quite a young age. I mean, when you were 13 years old, and as you've told me, you spent an awful lot of time with your grandparents, you know, growing up in your teenage years. And by that stage, in a way, your grandfather already retired from a very active role in cycling. But you also told me some wonderful stories about, you know, being at his house and having some pretty special people drop in. So he also was still having riders come and visit him and stay with him when they came to Belgium. So how was that as a young guy, you know, in your teens? Did you appreciate the gravitas of that, the respect that your grandfather had from these top riders?
Yeah, sure. For me, it was as a kid or as a young guy, it was special because I always loved cycling, and it was amazing because when the Tour de France took place, there was like journalists coming over the house to the house. They interviewed my grandfather again and again about Tour de France in '68 and stuff like that. So yeah, I noticed that it was special, and he was appreciated by some big names. And I remember it's a bit of a funny story, but I remember when I was a young guy, I think it should have been mid-90s, and Tony Rominger and Bjarne Risch, they were the big guys in the Tour de France that year. And right after the Tour de France, there was this race in Aartselaar, where we lived, and my grandparents lived as well. And Rominger and Risch, they took part in that Aartselaar race. They didn't want to stay with the other guys before the race. So they stayed at my grandparents' house, and we had breakfast together. And then I told them I would show them the way to the start of the race, not that far. And I took a friend of mine who had broken his leg and he was in a plaster. And I said, yeah, you can go on the back of my old city bike, and we'll show these guys the way to the start.
So you had Rominger and Risch behind you, following you on your city bike with a guy with his broken leg? And how did that go down with these? Because they were heroes. They were really big guys at that time.
Yeah, they were. And they just came out of the Tour de France like 2 days. It was like 2 days after the Tour. And I was really impressed. So I started pedaling, but it yeah, I went too slow, I guess. So after a few 100 meters, they were like, yeah, okay, it's fine. We'll find a way. Okay.
They kind of dumped you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it must have been amazing at that time. Of course, I mean, you know, even just for me coming to Belgium and living here now for 10 years, just how much cycling is part of the DNA, you know, of the Flandrian people, you know, there's an expression for it. And I guess your grandfather was respected as kind of really embodying the Flandrian ethic, not just in the way that he had success in his career, but also the way that he supported, you know, others and helped them to thrive. And then you actually you never got into cycle racing yourself, you never got into competition, but then you went off and you had a career. And you were doing great in your career, but then, as I understand, your early 40s, you started to think about this legacy of your grandfather and how you might be able to, in some way, you know, bring that legacy to life. And so, could you talk to us a little bit about how Soi Cycling started and then how that journey has evolved?
I think the special thing is that there never really was a plan. There was the story of my grandfather, and I really was into cycling, of course. And just a few years ago, I think it's 2016, I like this nice cycling kit, nice cycling apparel. I've always liked design and fashion and stuff like that. So I started an Instagram account with cool cycling kit. And just posted from the big brands and shared it with people without a real plan, I guess. Just thought it was fun to do, and it became successful and it grew, and I started thinking about maybe I should make my own caps for the account, and then I made custom cycling caps. People could order a cap with their initials printed on the peak and stuff like that, and they were sold really fast. And it's fun. So it made me think about maybe I should do something. I've got this story of my grandfather. I like making cool stuff, cool products, doing cool stuff, and maybe I should combine and start something, do something with it.
And that evolved pretty quickly because also you started to get some special fans. You know, I mean, Brian Holm, I understand, is, you know, he became an early fan of yours and started wearing your stuff. And so can you talk a little bit how, you know, making caps then evolved into, you know, other initially like casual apparel, but now, I mean, you also have an amazing range of like performance cycling wear as well. So how did those steps evolve, and how are you doing that, by the way, beside your full-time job?
Yeah, it started, like you said, Brian Holm was important. He's an ex-pro rider, and he's a director sportif at the Koenig Quickstep these days. And he's a real cool guy. And I got in contact with him through the Instagram account, and I've sent him a cap with his initials printed on it, and he liked it, and he posted a picture on Instagram, and we were in contact. And when I decided to start the brand Soi, I texted him, and he told me, I'm in Brussels next week with the team. We're at a hotel close to the airport, and you should come over and show me your the stuff you've got. And I just started. The brand wasn't even online. The website wasn't even online. I had my T-shirts and sweaters printed, like 4 designs, and that was it. That was the full collection. So I took some of the products with me, and I went to Brussels to the hotel of the Koenig Quickstep, and I talked to Brian, and Brian liked the products. I gave him some products. He went back home to Copenhagen the same night, and that same evening he called me to thank me because he liked the stuff and he thought it was really cool. And he posted some pictures on his social media, and that was like, for me, it was amazing because he's it's like the biggest compliment you can get, like one of the pro guys liking your stuff and appreciating, and he liked the story, and he knew about the story because he used to live in Antwerp years ago, and he knew about Sportpaleis and the 6 days and my grandfather's story. So he thought it was really a good story, and he liked the products. So that helped me to make it bigger in short time.
Yeah, I think that's an important part of the story because, you know, you and I have talked. I guess the thing that struck me, Tom, is that you kind of had the courage to do these things, you know, like just to call Brian home and say, let's meet up, and I've got a nice cap for you and stuff like that. And I think sometimes people who are entrepreneurs, they think that it's all too hard to reach out to famous people or people with influence or whatever. Whereas the big brands, of course, what are big brands doing? They're trying to do it all with money, right? I mean, they're trying to throw money at influencers, which you haven't done that, actually. You've just talked to people about your passion, about your real story, because there's so much heritage behind what you do with Soi. And that seems to have really engaged people, that you come to them not with deep pockets, but with a real passion and authenticity of what you do. And of course, that has also led to your incredible relationship with De Ronde and Flanders Classic. So can you tell us how that evolved? How did you become the exclusive apparel partner as a very small startup brand with something as huge as Flanders Classics?
Yeah, I like to see it as a coincidence. Even I was thinking about making a special T-shirt design dedicated to the Ronde, because it's one of the most legendary one-day bike races in the world, and it's all about Flanders. It's something special, and even my grandfather was in it as a sports director. So yeah, I always thought Flanders was one of the coolest races ever. And I wanted to do a T-shirt design. It was ready, the T-shirt design, but I wasn't sure about the word mark, Ronde. It said Ronde on it, and I wasn't sure about, can I do this? Can I release it? Will I be in trouble with Flanders Classics?
And to be honest, when we were starting the Flandrien Hotel, we were thinking about some names, including the words, De Ronde and so on. And we very quickly understood that Flanders Classics has pretty much every trademark and word mark related to the Tour of Flanders. So that obviously can be a big barrier, for you in terms of using De Ronde or the Tour of Flanders. So how did you address that? So you discovered that actually they did have the word marks registered. And what was your next step?
I called them and I wanted to ask whatever was possible to do with it, and they told me, no, you can't bring it because it's a word mark and we have it and could be a problem. But they told me at the moment we are looking to find a new partner to release a casual clothing line, the official casual line of the Tour of Flanders, and they said, yeah, we've talked to some brands already, but it's still open. It's an option to work with you. Just write down your ideas, send us a design and stuff like that. And well, I did. I started writing, and I've sent like this whole letter and my ID and designs the next day, and it was right before the weekend on a Friday, I guess, and they told me they would decide on Monday, and then really fast, and I got a bit stressed, but they called me on Tuesday and they said, yeah, we can work together. It's cool. We like the brand. We like the story. We like your ideas and designs, and let's do this. So yeah, we started working together, and this year it's the second year in a row that we released the official collection.
But wasn't that a bit scary as well? Because I think one of the things that struck me is when I visited your website and stuff, I was like, wow, this is really impressive, and like you have this really cool range of clothing and stuff. But then I came and visited you at your office, and it's really small, like you're really in startup mode and stuff. And it's really fun to see that, that you look so big and professional and everything, but actually you're still pretty much a one-man show. You're doing so much of this business and drawing it yourself. I mean, weren't you a bit afraid of that? Because suddenly they said yes, and yet you suddenly were going from selling just a few pieces here and there to then having to scale up very quickly. Did that freak you out a little bit, or was it a easy transition?
It wasn't an easy transition, but the scaling up is right. It's crazy if you think about it. Yeah, you've got some collections, and then I was doing Soi for a year and a half or 2 years when we started talking about Flanders collection. So yeah, it was scary, but I'm always looking at it as it's a challenge, and let's grow, and the people at Flanders Classics, they helped me a lot, even in how can we promote it, how can we get it on social media. They really helped me in contacting the riders as well, to get in contact with them. And yeah, it's cool, but it's a bit scary to go that fast suddenly. Yeah.
And suddenly you found yourself as an international business, because, when we spoke, you said, well, when you started out, you didn't really have a grand strategy. There was no kind of McKinsey or Boston Consulting Group or venture capital behind you. It was just Tom Cools. And yet, as I understand it, very quickly, your international business started growing organically. I mean, now you have quite a good business in Asia. You're growing certainly throughout Europe. You're even talking to some quite special people, we should say current pro riders from Australia and New Zealand, about growing there. So, I mean, how did that feel suddenly to be going from this small, very Belgian, in a way, Benelux business with a few sales into Germany to becoming an international scale business?
Yeah, it's crazy because there never really was a plan, and maybe that's the most comfortable part as well. It's a luxury, I guess, that you don't have to, and you don't have to follow a timeline and like a strict planning, and you want to grow too fast, or so things happen. Yeah, it's suddenly I noticed that people from Japan were surfing on the website, and then I went looking for the reason, and it seemed that one of our jerseys, the cycling kit, appeared in a review on a Japanese website, and people started surfing and ordering stuff, and then the next step was Asian resellers, distributors contacting me from Taiwan, from Indonesia, stuff like that. So yeah, it's gone really fast. Yeah.
So the other job had to go. So you decided to leap into Soi as your full-time job. I mean, how did that feel? I mean, was that a very natural thing to do, or were you afraid because you're in your early 40s, you have two kids, your wife is working, but you made this bold move to basically leave a career of 20 years to jump in full-time to Soi. So tell us about that. How did you feel, and what led to that decision?
It's a bit scary when you decide to do it, but then again, it went in a few different steps and it grew. So I didn't do things that were like a big risk or stuff like that. When I started, it was like taking my daughter's bedroom and putting all boxes in it.
So that means you had to put your kids in one room to grow your business in the second room. That's very cool.
Yeah, true. But it's crazy having your house full of boxes and doing all the logistics from your home, and it's good for a short period of time, but not for too long. So I took some steps, and yeah, it grew. I decided to start working less on my day job. So I had a few spare hours to do the Soi shipping and online marketing and stuff like that. And then after that, I decided to move all the boxes to another place, to the current office where I'm now, not far from home. So it's easy to go there and to work from there. And then just a few months after, I decided to quit my job because it felt right, and even I needed the time to work on the brand, and yeah.
And things have been going great. I mean, when I visit your office, and we see all these orders coming in from all over the world, but it is getting bigger now. And actually, you and I sat with an entrepreneur last week who'd gone through a similar kind of growth story, and he was sharing his experience with you about that scaling process. So what are you thinking of now in terms of what needs to happen in the next few months, particularly with the growth you're experiencing in Asia?
We have to have a look at logistics in first place. Like we keep stock in the office, and all packages, all shipments leave from there. But it takes a lot of time to prepare all packages and stuff like that. So we're having a look at it right now to work with a shipping partner and stuff like that. So, but that again is a challenge, and we'll have to find a way to work it out. And then I think, growing in new markets. We're growing in Asia. There's still some countries in Asia that I would like to be at, and then even other countries, like some countries in South America. Cycling is very popular over there, and they like nice clothing and stuff like that. So I think those steps are next. Yeah.
And why do you think it is, Tom? Because I mean, the interesting thing with me is, I've been speaking over the last couple of weeks since we met, with some, current former pros and also other people in the industry, and so many people are aware of Soi, and this international visibility now for the brand. Why do you think that is? What is it about you and the brand that seems to really resonate with people? Because honestly, when you go online today, it seems everybody is launching a casual cycling apparel brand. It seems like they realize there's a market there and everyone is launching something.
Yeah, to be honest, it's I'm always surprised by this kind of feedback and people liking the brand and most of all the pro riders liking the brand and people who are in cycling. Yeah, it's amazing. I don't know. I think it's about it starts with the story. I think the story is like authentic and they feel it's a true story and it's not just like a big marketing brand you came up with a story and yeah, let's do some cool things, and cycling is hot right now, so we just release cycling stuff. And I think it's about being genuine and authentic, and I think it's that. Yeah, but I'm still surprised. Yeah.
And I mean, that's also, again, I think for me as a strategy professor and having worked so long in this world of strategy and planning, it was also in a way really refreshing to meet you and to discover someone who's just in a way had such an organic story. I mean, ultimately what you explained to me is it was really driven by this desire to bring your grandfather's name and story back to the world, because in a way, he is not with us anymore, and his story was incredible. So that really resonated with me personally. And in fact, after, I looked at your website, what did I do? I went off actually Googling François Cools, and I wanted to find out more of the story. And there was so much there, actually. So that's very powerful. But where do you see yourself in maybe 3 years from now? Because, the other thing we should bring into the story is that, your wife has also now been inspired to become an entrepreneur. She's thinking about developing something as well. So, I mean, how is that evolving for you? And how do you juggle that with your wife's desires and your children who are still quite young as well?
Yeah, I think that the family part is quite important. And quitting my job and spending more time for this project is one thing, but it also gave the luxury to have some spare time to spend with the kids, or to be there like on a Wednesday afternoon if needed, or in the weekends. So it's that part is quite important, being a husband, being a dad who is there. So that's quite important. And like for the future, even there is no timeline, there's no strategy with like these very strict goals and stuff like that. So I want to grow the brand, and I want to do cool projects and cool stuff with cool people, and I like what I'm doing, and I'm blessed, I know, because I think it's quite important to do stuff you like. And
Excellent. And what do you think your grandfather would think about all this, that his name and his story is now out there in the world, and so many people are feeling a connection with it?
I hope he would be proud. I think he always wanted me to be a cyclist, to be a pro cyclist. My dad and my uncle were cyclists, and they won a lot of races in the amateur divisions. So they all wanted me to be a cyclist as well. And I guess I wasn't that talented. But I think still he would be happy and proud of me doing this.
Great. Well, as they say, Tom, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard, right? And you're certainly working hard at the moment, but also great to hear from you. And actually also not just hear from you, but, we got to know each other a little bit over the last few weeks, and also seeing the way that you live. And I think it's really important what you say, that, obviously you have such a massive opportunity to grow this business. However, you also say no to a lot of things at the moment because that doesn't fit where you are right now, with your family and having young kids and stuff like that, which I think is really refreshing as well. And I think that you know, when people look at a brand, they look at a business, they always think about grow, 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 expand, expand, expand. But actually, you're doing that in a very careful way, which I guess also will help the brand longer term, because, you know, I think we see a lot of brands out there in the world today, you know, a very big British brand in particular, that in a way has become so big and in a way so common that it has lost something along that way. So, you know, there's nothing wrong with small and beautiful if that's what you want to do and that's what you want to continue doing. And that sounds as though that's the path you're on for the moment. So sounds great. I mean, just what advice, Tom, would you give to people? Because there's probably people watching this and thinking, wow, this is inspiring. You know, there's a guy who starts selling cycling caps, and then Brian Holm jumps on board, and then Flanders Classics jumps on board. And here he is today, really living his life in such an inspired way. What 2 or 3 pieces of advice would you give people who are thinking about, you know, starting something or building something as you have done?
I think if you think about doing something, then just do it, try it, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't. Then maybe it brings something else. Something else comes out of it, and that might work. So just do it, I guess. Just try and make mistakes, and try again, and maybe it's successful. And to me, it's important that it's all about intuition. As you said, some things I don't do because they don't feel right, and so just do what you like, and it will show that it's authentic, and it will work.
Great. Okay. Well, Tom Cools, thanks a lot for joining us here on the This Cycling Life YouTube channel, filmed for the first time in our studio at the Flandrian Hotel. It's been great to get to know you, and also, I mean, very special for us is that we're going to start working with you as our apparel brand that we're going to have at the hotel in Parika, in Brakel, in the Flemish Ardennes. So I'm sure we'll have lots of our international guests leaving the Flandrian Hotel with a little piece of the story of François Cools. So, Tom, thank you very, very much again for your time.
Thanks for having me.